Good morning, guys. Well, I started doing this with The Hobbit and with Fahrenheit 451, and so I wanted to continue doing that with The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, which is maybe known for two reasons. First, of course, that it is the sequel to The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, and also because over the course of the last 100 years or so, it has been on and off one of the most banned books ever, largely, of course, because of its use of a controversial word, which, as I've mentioned to some of you before, of course, is not a reflection of Mark Twain's perspective, but a reflection of the way the characters at that time, who were products of their culture and also their lack of education, um, spoke, and so it was Mark Twain's way of being colloquial, of reflecting the verbal idiosyncrasies and the idioms of that time. So I'm going to read, and then I'm actually going to, for Huckleberry Finn, include the commentary at the end for parts that I think need that extra bit of clarification. Just going to do the first chapter, maybe the first two. If you find it helpful, please feel free to leave a comment. If you opt not to continue following along, that's fine. Please be kind. All right, let's begin. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Notice, persons attempting to find a motive in this narrative will be prosecuted. Persons attempting to find a moral in it will be banished. Persons attempting to find a plot in it will be shot by order of the author. We always knew that Mark Twain was a master of satire, and even though there actually was a clear motive, which he reveals over the course of his story, he sort of prepares us to just appreciate the story by saying that there is no deeper purpose, there is no moral, and ironically, of course, he says there isn't even a plot. So let's continue. In this book, a number of dialects are used, to wit, the Missouri Negro dialect, the extremist form of the backwoods Southwestern dialect, the ordinary Pike County dialect, and four modified variations of this last. These shadings have not been done in a haphazard fashion or by guesswork, but painstakingly and with the trustworthy guidance and support of personal familiarity with these several forms of speech. I make this explanation for the reason without it many readers would suppose that all these characters are trying to talk alike and not succeeding. Chapter 1. Huckleberry Finn, scene the Mississippi Valley, time 40 to 50 years ago. You don't know about me without you have read a book by the name of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, but that ain't no matter. That book was made by Mr. Mark Twain, and he told the truth mainly. There was things which he stretched, but mainly he told the truth. That is nothing. I never seen anybody but lied one time or another, without it was Aunt Polly, or the widow, or maybe Mary. Aunt Polly, Tom's Aunt Polly she is, and Mary, and the widow Douglas is all told about in that book, which is mostly a true book, with some stretchers, as I said before. Now, the way that the book winds up is this. Tom and me found the money that the robbers hid in the cave, and it made us rich. We got $6,000 apiece, all gold. An awful sight of money when it was piled up. Well, Judge Thatcher, he took it and put it out at interest, and it fetched us $1 a day apiece all the year round, more than a body could tell what to do with. The widow Douglas, she took me for her son, and allowed she'd civilize me. But it was rough living in the house all the time, considering how dismal, regular, and decent the widow was in all her ways. So when I couldn't stand it no longer, I lit out, got my old rags and my sugar hogshead again, and was free and satisfied. But Tom Sawyer, he hunted me up and said he was going to start a band of robbers, and I might join if I'd go back to the widow and be respectable. So I went back. The widow, she cried over me and called me a poor lost lamb, and she called me a lot of other names too, but she never meant no harm by it. She put me in them new clothes again, and I couldn't do nothing but sweat and feel all cramped up. Well, then the old thing commenced again. The widow rung a bell for supper, and you had to come to time. You got to the table, you couldn't go right to eating, but you had to wait for the widow to tuck down her head and grumble a little over the victuals, though there weren't really anything the matter or wrong with them. That is, nothing, only everything was cooked by itself. The barrel of odds and ends is different. Things get mixed up, and the juice kind of swaps around, and things go better. After supper, she got out her book and learned me about Moses and the bulrushers, and I was in a sweat to find out all about him. But by and by, she let it out that Moses has been dead a considerable long time, so then I didn't care no more about him, because I don't take no stock in dead people. Pretty soon I wanted to smoke, and I asked the widow to let me, but she wouldn't. She said it was a mean practice and wasn't clean, and I must try not to do it any more. That is just the way with some people. They get down on a thing when they don't know nothing about it. Here she was a bothering about Moses, which was no kin to her, and no use to anybody being gone, you see, yet finding a power of fault with me for doing a thing that had some good in it. She took snuff, too. Of course, that was all right, because she done it herself. Her sister, Miss Watson, a tolerable slim old maid with goggles on, had just come to live with her, and took a set at me now with a spelling book. She worked me middling hard for about an hour, and then the widow made her ease up. I couldn't stood it much longer. Then for an hour it was deadly dull, and I was fidgety. Miss Watson would say, "Don't put your feet up there, Huckleberry. Don't scrunch up like that, Huckleberry. Sit up straight." And pretty soon she would say, "Don't gap and stretch like that, Huckleberry. Why don't you try to behave?" And then she told me all about the bad place, and I said I wished I was there. She got mad then, but I didn't mean no harm. All I wanted was to go somewheres. All I wanted was a change. I weren't particular. She said it was wicked to say what I said, and she wouldn't say it for the whole world. She was going to live so as to go to the good place. Well, I couldn't see no advantage in going where she was going, so I made up my mind I wouldn't try for it. But I never said so, because it would only make trouble, wouldn't do no good. Now she had a start, and she went on and told me all about the good place. She said all a body would have to do there was go around all day long with a harp and sing forever and ever. I didn't think much of it. But I never said so. I asked her if she reckoned Tom Sawyer would go there, and she said not by a considerable sight. I was glad about that, because I wanted him and me to be together. Miss Watson, she kept pecking at me, and it got tiresome and lonesome. By and by, they fetched the niggers in and had prayers, and then everyone was off to bed. I went up to my room with a piece of candle and put it on the table. Then I sat down in a chair by the window and tried to think of something cheerful, but it weren't no use. I felt so lonesome I most wished I was dead. The stars were shining and the leaves rustled in the woods ever so mournful, and I heard an owl away off hoo-hooing about something that was dead, and a whippoorwill and a dog crying about somebody that was going to die, and the wind was trying to whisper something to me, and I couldn't make out what it was, so it made cold shivers run over me. Then away out in the wood, I heard that kind of sound that a ghost makes when it wants to tell about something that's on its mind and can't make itself understood, and so can't rest easy in its grave and has to go about that way every night grieving. I got so downhearted and scared I did wish I had some company. Pretty soon a spider came crawling up my shoulder, and I flipped it off, and it lit in the candle, and before I could budge, it was all shriveled up. I didn't need anybody to tell me it was an awful bad sign and would fetch me some bad luck, so I was scared, most shook the clothes off me. I got up and turned around in my tracks 3 times and crossed my breast every time, and then I tied up a little lock of my hair with a thread to keep witches away. I had no confidence. You do that when you've lost a horseshoe that you found instead of nailing it up over the door. I hadn't ever heard anyone say it was a way to keep off bad luck when you'd killed a spider. I sat down again, a shaking all over, and got up my pipe for a smoke, for the house was as still as death now, so the widow wouldn't know. But after a long time, I heard a clock away off in the town go boom, boom, boom. 12 licks and all still again, stiller than ever. Pretty soon I heard a twig snap down in the dark amongst the trees. Something was a-stirring. I sat still and listened. Directly I could just barely hear it. Meow, meow, down there. That was good, says I. Meow, meow, as soft as I could. And then I put out the light and scrambled down out the window onto the shed. Then I slipped down to the ground and crawled in among the trees, and sure enough, there was Tom Sawyer waiting for me.